Hey friends, what's up? Ash here, welcome back to Gents. Stop me if you've heard this before. Rasasi has dropped a new Hawas.
Another one.
Actually, stop me if you've heard that before multiple times within, I don't know, the past month. But yeah, they have. They dropped a new one. It is Hawas Overdose this time that we're taking a look at. This one popped up in JOMASHOP, basically a shadow drop. Stuff came out of nowhere. 44 bucks. So not crazy expensive, but is it worth that price? Well, let's kick it off by taking a look at the presentation, and then I'll let you know how it smells, which the color is a bit of a giveaway. Le box. Got that snakeskin in overdrive this time. Kind of looks like Victor Gideon's fragrance from Resident Evil Requiem. On the front there, you have the name of the fragrance, the name of the flanker, the size and concentration, 100 ml eau de parfum, little logo up top. On the side, you have your sticker of authenticity, which you can scratch for authentication. Nice. On the back, a little further information, including the Rasasi website, and then on the bottom, your ingredients, badge code, barcode. Interestingly enough, my bottle manufactured March 2026. So these were ready to go for at least a little while, and then they just suddenly popped up at JOMASHOP. Like I said, kind of a shadow drop. And here we have the bottle. You have on the front there, the name of the fragrance has this kind of orangish hue to it, basically like a burnt orange. On top of the cap, you have Rasasi. On the back, a sticker. And on the bottom, it says Rasasi as well. The cap does click into place. Let's go ahead and do a couple sprays. Here we go. Nice. Rasasi Hawas. It's become almost a meme at this point because like I was talking about at the beginning of the video, they just keep coming, bro. It's like they fed gremlins after midnight. Just everything is all out of whack, and we have new Hawas fragrances popping up legitimately at this point like every other week. To the point that some people are like, bro, you're completely misunderstanding it. Hawas is the name of the brand. I'm not even playing. There have been people that have commented that. Guys, it does say Hawas here, but Hawas is not the name of the brand. Rasasi, that's the name of the brand. And contrary to popular belief, they do actually have other fragrances outside of Hawas. It's just, these are the ones that they really concentrate on a lot. But that just lets you know how it's gone. It's gotten so confusing for some people that they see this and they think the brand is Hawas. Hawas is the brand. It's not, brother. That would be like saying Kamra is the name of the brand or Club de Nuit is the name of the brand. But they've done it to themselves. So, you know, it is what it is. So with that out of the way, you already know what this smells similar to. You saw the color scheme and the thumbnail, I'm assuming. Altair. That's right. So we're gonna compare this to this and also this. That way you can know where this stacks up against both the OG and the most popular alternative to the OG. And if you were expecting Hawas Overdose to be a massive twist, a huge change, it is not really. It puts its cards on the table right away. When you spray this on, you can tell immediately it is a PDM Altair alternative or inspired by Dupe clone, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it's not the exact same as the PDM. No, actually off the top, this one, Liquid Brun, is closer to the Parfums de Marly than Overdose is. And this is gonna sound weird, but Overdose actually has less freshness off the top. Yeah, no, that's what everybody thinks of when they think about these two fragrances over here. They go, oh yeah, super fresh, super clean. Obviously, they're not that type of fragrance. They're mainly sweet, sexy, almost gourmand adjacent fragrances, but they do have a bit of freshness in them, especially when you first spray them on. The Rasasi is not quite as fresh and not quite as much of that clean aspect lurking underneath that these two have. Instead, the Rasasi has a faint aromatic edge to it, which I know, you look at the note breakdown and in the top it says aromatic notes. So yeah, I'm really reaching there. But it does, it's got a little bit of an aromatic flair to it that you're not gonna pick up as much in these over here. Overdose has a sugary spiced orange blossom that you can pick up in the opening as well that starts to kind of work its way up and become more noticeable as it dries down on your skin. There's also a faint dry woodiness that you can pick up in the Rasasi that doesn't come across as clearly over here. And in just that initial blast, I'd say these two fragrances over here are actually a little bit smoother than Rasasi Hawas Overdose. Now don't take that as me saying Rasasi Hawas Overdose smells cheap, it smells rough, none of that. It's just the way these are made. This one has a little more heft to it. It's way heavier when you first spray it on. And even though this is just an eau de parfum, that's where the name Overdose makes sense, because initially this stuff is heavy, boy. It is strong. It definitely makes its presence known, even more so than these two over here off that initial rip. Now, as this starts to settle, still in the opening, we're still talking just a couple minutes in, just a few minutes in. And even though it's just in eau de parfum, yeah, just in eau de parfum, the opening lets you know right away where Overdose gets its name. There's more force behind the opening in this than the original and Liquid Brun, at least for me. This stuff is strong, which depending on how you like your fragrances could be positive or negative. Now, as Hawas Overdose settles in, still talking about in the opening of the fragrance, like maybe 5 minutes in, it starts to almost loosen up a little bit. So like I said, initially, these come across smelling smoother, but really quickly, this one starts to get a nice mix of different notes going on. You can pick up chocolate, praline, the vanilla, of course, the orange blossom, a light, warm spiciness. All of that comes together, blended together really nicely. And it saves that opening from coming across as just like a sledgehammer style of Altair fragrance, just a really heavy Altair type fragrance, into something that's a little more interesting. Still really strong, don't get me wrong. It just has this nice balanced density once it settles. Now, all that said, if you're looking for the one that's closest to being this, it's this. Liquid Brun is closer in the opening to being more of a one-to-one with Altair than this is. This is like the heavier, denser cousin of this. Or maybe brother, because they are pretty close.
My brother!
Now, as I said, 44 bucks at JOMASHOP. That's what I got this for. It's linked in the description, and if you shop at JOMASHOP, you can use these codes to save yourself a little extra cash. They only work within the JOMASHOP app though, and they change every quarter. All the codes you see here on your screen are also in the description, so you can just copy paste at any of those stores if you shop there. Save yourself a little extra cash. In the mid, a lot of what got established in the opening just carries over. So in the opening, these come across slightly fresher, same in the mid. And I'd say the clearest difference there between these two is that these fragrances have the orange blossom riding on top of the other notes a little bit more clearly. And that orange blossom in particular gives these fragrances here a little more lift compared to the Hawas. So when you smell these, whether it's up close or in the air, you kind of get that differentiation between the top notes, the mid notes, the base notes. So it has that sweetness, right? You can pick up the vanilla, you can pick up the Gaiac wood, the tonka, all of that coming across, but then you have the orange blossom kind of over top. So that hits you first, and then the other notes after. With Hawas Overdose, they're kind of all bunched together, not in a bad way. It's just they're not as clearly separated out. And that does make the Hawas feel thicker, denser, richer overall. And in the mid is where that bourbon vanilla character that this fragrance is really well known for starts to come out in Hawas Overdose as well. It actually picks up almost a sparkle to it. You know, that kind of effervescence that some fragrances can get, especially with their vanilla notes. This one gets that too. But it's weird because it's in the mid, not the opening. Usually the opening is where that happens. You get that lift right as soon as you spray the fragrance on. You know, some of them smell like root beer or something like that, you know, mixing together with vanilla. But here, it waits until the mid. Like this little spicy, zingy lift alongside that vanilla and Hawas Overdose, which does make it smell a lot better to me once you hit that mid. Really, really appealing. And that part is really needed in the fragrance, because if it wasn't there, this one may come across just too thick, you know, too heavy. Thankfully, it doesn't lean overly far toward the syrupy side of things, so it's not really a headache-inducing type of sweetness that this has. But without that bit of zing, without that little bit of pop that you get there in the mid, I feel like it may just lay a bit too heavy. And so while the twist that this has through the mid is maybe not massive as far as the difference here versus these over here, it's needed and it smells better for it. And that fizziness is really needed here because it takes a little edge off of that thick sweetness that the fragrance has. Thankfully, it doesn't lean too far toward being overly syrupy and headache inducing or anything like that, because that fizziness does kind of sit alongside remnants of the orange blossom that carries over into the mid. That interplay between the fizzy spiciness, the vanilla, the orange blossom, that praline, all of that keeps this one really wearable. It makes it smell attractive in the air instead of just thick and heavy. And honestly, as overplayed as this DNA is at this point, which it is, there are a bunch of different alternatives to this fragrance out there, both straight up one-to-ones like this and hybrids at this point. As overplayed as this kind of is, Hawas Overdose still smells awesome. In the opening and especially the mid, it commands attention. And as overused as the Hawas name is at this point, which we all know it is freaking insane. And I fully expect there to be 2 or 3 more Hawas fragrances that come out in July. Like, that would not surprise me at all. But yeah, as overplayed as this is, as potentially eye-rolling as all the Hawas fragrances are, it smells good. Essentially, through the opening and mid, it's a turbocharged version of the PDM with maybe a little more of an emphasis on the base notes, on the density of the scent. You know, it's maybe got a little extra swagger to it. That's kind of how it comes across. But that's the opening and the mid. What about the dry down? The most important part. For me in the dry down, this one leans a little bit heavier on the woods. Not that it's a woody fragrance, because it isn't, and neither are these, but you can pick up a little bit more of that Gaiac wood kind of lingering underneath in the Rasasi. One thing that happened to me a lot when testing this one against these over here is nose blindness. Even into the dry down, you would think it's not projecting as hard. You know, it's sitting a little bit closer to the skin, so you're not gonna go nose blind to it anymore. So you go in, you know, get a big whiff of it, and then it's gone. You're just like, it feels like it isn't there. It's that type of fragrance. It'll put your nose out of commission quick. And then you have to basically just chill for a little bit, let your nose recover, and boom, there it is again. So be aware of that with this one, even more so than these. Like, if you're the type of person that these fragrances knock your nose out of commission, you're done. You're not gonna be smelling anything, man. It's just gonna...
I mean, it still works. I can smell things. I just have to be a lot closer than most people.
So outside of that, the spice carries over nicely into the dry down. Not an overdose of spice, even though that's the name of the fragrance. Just a really pleasant, warm spiciness that carries over, though it does lose that sparkle from the mid. That doesn't carry over into the dry down. You also have a very rich, developed bourbon, vanilla, praline, chocolate combination in the dry down there as well. And I know that sounds like it's gonna be crazy, crazy sweet and just give you diabetes. It's actually not that bad. Even though it is heavier than these over here, it doesn't come across noticeably sweeter. And you do also get a little bit of orange blossom that carries over into the dry down as well. It gives a nice juxtaposition to the fragrance, a little touch of freshness even in that dry down. And the final impression it leaves on you is really close to the initial impression that it gives you. Thickened up Altair DNA with great performance, with a rich gourmand weight and enough cleanliness from the orange blossom to make sure it doesn't go too far overboard. Keeps everything smelling really attractive, and just like these fragrances, a big attention grabber. Now, in terms of overall performance, I've talked about this, you know, from the beginning, but it is strong. This off my skin outperforms these. It projects more, it lasts longer. Right this second, I'm wearing this here, and I'm wearing this here. And hands down, the Rasasi is stronger than the PDM. So if you're one of those guys out there who really ranks fragrances sheerly on how strong they are, like performance is the #1 most important thing to you, this is gonna be your go-to if you're looking for the strongest Altair alternative from the big brands out there. And that carries over into seasonality. I would not wear this in spring. I would absolutely never wear this in summer. Unless I guess you're somewhere where it's really cold and you could pull it off, like you're way far up north and it doesn't get very warm or anything during summer, you could go for it then. Outside of that, fall and winter. That's it, fall and winter. In terms of price, value, all of that, at 44 bucks, it's reasonable. Because a lot of, you know, dupe brands, Middle Eastern brands, they'll put stuff out and they'll do a whole pre-sale thing. They'll charge you 60 bucks or more, and then you'll have people trying to resell for 90 bucks or more. So at 44, we'll just call it 45. At 45 bucks, you know, that's a little bit toward the upper end of dupe fragrance pricing, but it's not crazy. And at that price, you do get some really good quality, good value here. If it drops down further, if it hits like below 40, especially 35, something like that, at that point, you're cooking. As it is though, if you're looking just straight up bang for buck and you don't care as much about the big time performance or whatever, this is gonna be a better bang for buck than this for a lot of people, because you can get this cheaper, the performance is still good, it smells great, it does what this does, right? So if bang for buck is just the absolute most important thing for you, you could go for this or one of the other alternatives out there. There are a bunch. So what's the overall verdict, the pros, the cons? Well, like the fragrance it's inspired by, it is a compliment magnet. People love this scent profile, which is why every single Middle Eastern brand out there, and also non-Middle Eastern dupe brands as well, have their versions of this already on the market, which also means Rasasi is really, 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 really late to the market. And they are.
Am I too late?
When you think about it, French Avenue, Armaf, Afnan, Lattafa, Codlage, Velixer, and many, many more brands out there already have alternatives on the market to this fragrance. And it's not like those are all coming out at the same time. Some of them have been out for 2 years already. And then you've got multiple hybrid fragrances at this point that smell similar to this mixed with something else. And that does create an issue in my opinion. Not that this smells bad, it smells killer. The performance is there, everything you would want is there. But is it redundant to own this if you own this or some of the other ones? Yeah, it's completely redundant. The only reason to get it is if that bit of a twist that it does and the added performance is worth it for you. For most people who are looking for an alternative to this fragrance, they already own one, or two, or three. Does this one do something so much better than the others that you have to own it even if there's that much overlap? Not really, unless again, the performance is that important to you. Outside of that, it is crazy redundant to pick this up if you already own this or multiple other fragrances like this. So the scent itself is a huge win. The timing is a huge problem. So that'll bring me to the pros and cons. First, the pros. The smell, it's fantastic. If you like the original, you will like this. The performance, fantastic. It lasts forever, it projects heavily, so just a few sprays can go a long way. It's a richer, denser, more forceful take on the PDM Altair DNA, which a lot of the other alternatives don't really go that far down that route like this one does. The compliment factor is there just like you would expect, and the price overall, all things considered, is fair. Now the cons, as I just mentioned, it arrives late to an already crowded field. It can cause nose blindness very quickly, so you have to be cognizant of that. You know, don't smell it and be like, oh, it's gone, I better reapply. Ooh. For some people, it may be a con that off the top, it's not quite as smooth as these, and it does lose a little hint of the freshness that these have. And the final con, it's gonna be very redundant for most people who already own an alternative to this scent. Now, if you don't own an alternative to this, fair play, go for it at that point. But I wouldn't immediately drop everything because of FOMO and be like, I've gotta get it, even though I have 4 alternatives already. At that point, you're just repurchasing the same thing with a 10% difference here, 15% difference there. Probably not worth it. So that's the full breakdown of the new Hawas Overdose. Overall smells amazing, but should you buy it? It depends on what you're after. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.